I'm an adult film star. My fiancé, on the other hand, is a rich heir who keeps his distance from women. No matter how many times I try to seduce him, he remains unmoved. That is, until the night he made an exception for his secretary. I took off the ring, and calmly said, "Call off the engagement, Alger." The man who was always so composed suddenly had tears welling up in his eyes. After finishing a night shoot, I returned home to find the light still on in Alger's study. I slipped off my high heels, tiptoeing carefully as I passed by. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the doorknob turning, followed by his low, questioning voice. "Have you thought it through?" He was referring to me leaving the entertainment industry and becoming a full-time wife. I froze in my tracks and turned to look at him. Alger is famous in this city for being a cold, indifferent air. His eyes always carry an icy, emotionless gaze. Even towards me, his fiancée, he showed no exception. I felt a sharp sting in my chest, took a deep breath, and hesitated for a long time before speaking. "I don't want to give up the career I've fought for over the years." Before I could finish, I was interrupted by his mocking laughter. "Being an adult film star is your career?" Alger's eyes scanned my chest and thighs, with a hint of derision in his gaze. I fell silent. After a long pause, he spat out his final words, slammed the door, and stormed into the guest room. "Either you quit, or we break up. Your choice." This was the 10th argument since we got engaged. Like the previous 9, he demanded that I leave the industry, but I refused. We grew up together as childhood sweethearts, living in the same neighborhood. Alger was always exceptionally kind to me. The clean-cut boy in a white shirt would hold me up when I stumbled. "Maxine, be careful." He would step in whenever I was bullied. Even when he was beaten bloody, he would comfort me. "It doesn't hurt. It just looks bad." I can't remember exactly when I started liking him. All I remember is that summer when I was 17. He slipped a ruby ring onto my ring finger, his smile pure and bright. "Never take it off, Maxine." That ring had belonged to Alger's mother, and it was the most precious thing to him. But fate was cruel. Soon after, my family went bankrupt and fell deep into debt. My parents jumped off a building, leaving only my sickly grandmother and me. I needed money. A lot of money. I turned to Alger for help, but he was too caught up in the family's power struggles to care about me. With nowhere else to turn, a scout handed me a business card. "With a body like yours, you could make quick money in the film industry." I signed the contract without thinking. Only later did I realize that nearly half of the roles involved wearing bikinis. When I changed into the costume, I hesitated and covered my chest. The director saw this and angrily yelled at me. "It's just a little sexiness, what's the big deal? You're not doing anything else. Put away that ridiculous pride. You still want to make money? Either act, or get out." Thinking of my grandmother's expensive surgery, I gritted my teeth and let go of my hands. That movie made me famous overnight, and endorsements came pouring in. But with success came a heavy price. I was labeled as an adult film star. No matter how many serious roles I took on afterward, or how many different characters I portrayed, whenever people mentioned me, they would laugh and tease. "Maxine? Yeah, she's got a hot body." Alger seemed to mind that a lot. After defeating his half-brother and securing his position, he came back to find me. One day, I was leaving a commercial gig when a wealthy, middle-aged man stopped me. "Miss Maxine, how much for a night?" I trembled with anger. But he thought I was pretending to be clueless. "What, you started as an adult film star, and now you're pretending to be pure? Look at that." Even though I worked for 7 years, even though I had reached the top, some still thought I climbed the ladder with my body. Before I could explode, the man was suddenly kicked to the ground. A pair of leather shoes stomped hard on his fingers. "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Who do you want to be with?" When he saw Alger's face, the man quickly started smiling, even kneeling on the ground to apologize. After the commotion ended, Alger, with a cold face, yanked me into his arms. His hot breath brushed against my ear. "After all these years, is this how you've been ruining yourself?" I lowered my gaze, running my fingers over the ruby ring on my finger, and suddenly laughed out loud. Yes. No one helped me, so I had to rely on myself. Alger stared at me for a long time, his expression softening, and then he hugged me tighter, almost crushing me into his chest. It's my fault for coming too late. The rest of the night flowed naturally. But for some reason, just as we were about to take the final step, Alger pushed me away. His eyes were unreadable. Have you been sullied? In that instant, I froze. A wave of bitterness and disbelief overwhelmed me, and tears fell without warning. When he saw me crying, Alger panicked. He kept apologizing to me. Maxine, I'm sorry. I spoke without thinking. Don't cry. It hurts me to see you like this. Let's get engaged again, okay? You won't have to work so hard anymore. I choked on my words, unable to speak. But what Alger didn't know was that without that role, without those film contracts, my beloved grandmother would never have made it this far, and I could never have paid off the debts by myself. What he despised, my past, had actually saved me from disaster. Pulling myself out of the memories, I knocked on the guest room door, trying for one last effort. Alger sat on the couch, looking up with a determined gleam in his eyes. Have you made up your mind? I sat down across from him, ready to speak candidly, but my phone rang, cutting me off. Alger glanced at the caller ID, then turned his phone face down. The entire process took less than 3 seconds, but I still managed to catch the name in the contact. Nina. Alger's secretary. In my first year in the entertainment industry, he met Nina, a graduate from a prestigious school. She helped him seize power and rise to the top. The two of them had been through a lot together, and their relationship was close. Aren't you going to answer? It might be urgent. I reminded him. Alger frowned and immediately hung up the call. What's urgent? Go on, continue. I took a moment to gather myself, then told him everything that happened during the past 7 years, how I went from an unknown actress to a top star. At first, Alger listened intently, very seriously. But gradually, he began glancing at his phone. Finally, when the phone rang again, he stood up and interrupted me. I've got something to do. You go ahead and sleep, don't wait for me. The door slammed behind him, and that's when I realized how urgent his departure had been. So I didn't hesitate. I immediately got in the car and followed him. When I saw Nina wearing a bikini, hooking Alger's tie, all the blood in my body froze. She mimicked the expression I had in that movie, smiling seductively. Does Maxine know that you despise her for being an adult film star, but still have me dress up as her to please you? Between me and her, who do you prefer? Alger clearly enjoyed this, pulling her into his arms, raising an eyebrow, with a smirk. Of course, it's you, babe. Then why didn't you answer my call? Were you with her? Stop overthinking. Touch her? I think she's dirty. Satisfied with his answer, Nina smiled and kissed him on the lips. The two of them embraced and walked into the villa. I stood there for 2 hours. The cold began to seep through my limbs, slowly creeping into my heart. In the 6 months since we got engaged, Alger had never touched me. Every time things got heated, he would stop, gently kiss my forehead, and go to the bathroom to shower. I tried everything to seduce him, but he remained unmoved. Let's leave this for our wedding night, okay? At that moment, I truly believed him. But just now, he was with Nina. I stumbled back home and sat in the living room all night. When dawn broke, the door at the entrance opened. Alger probably didn't expect me to be waiting for him. When his gaze met mine, he froze for a few seconds before snapping out of it. He furrowed his brow in concern, picked me up in his arms, and carried me to the bedroom. Why aren't you sleeping? I told you, you don't have to wait for me. I smelled a strange sweet fragrance on him and slowly pushed his hands away. I'm not leaving the industry, Alger. The moment the words left my mouth, he seemed to find it absurd. Pick one. If you won't leave the industry, then you'll have to. Leave the industry, or leave the engagement. Alger was sure I loved him too much to walk away. Are you joking, Maxine? I met his disbelieving eyes, my voice quiet but firm. You asked me to choose, and I choose my career. My family went bankrupt, I hit rock bottom, and Alger wasn't by my side. I didn't blame him. I understood that his situation at that time was difficult too. But last night, when he said, touch her, and I'll think she's filthy, it felt like a sharp knife stabbed deep into my heart. It hurt so much, like my insides were being torn apart. The man I had loved for 7 years suddenly seemed like he didn't love me anymore. I closed my eyes wearily, forcing back the tremor in my voice. It's over, Alger. When I finished speaking, I saw the always composed son of the Shin family suddenly tear up. His neck muscles tensed as his breathing quickened. He grabbed my wrist roughly, his voice tight. Do you really like being an escort so much? So much that you'd give up being the wife of a wealthy family? Or is it because I forced you to choose, and that upset you? Before I could answer, he forcibly slid the ruby ring back onto my finger. Stop saying hurtful things. Go get some rest. When you wake up, we'll talk. The door gently closed behind him. I curled my fingers, my gaze fixed on the clear, sparkling ruby. 7 years had passed, and it still gleamed brightly. But the young man who gave me the ring seemed to have died back in the summer of his 17th year. The phone on the table vibrated twice. I answered it, and Susan, my agent, let out a distressed wail. Our endorsement deal just got cancelled, and the show you're filming? The production team suddenly replaced you. The penalty fees already been transferred to my account. That was supposed to be your biggest job this year. Who's behind all this? I quietly listened, then hummed in response. Susan, who had been with me since my debut, knew my temperament well and immediately sensed something was off. She paused, then hesitated before asking. Did you have a fight with Mr. Alger? Did he orchestrate this? I gave a bitter smile. Who else could intercept all my resources in just 10 minutes, if not Alger, who held shares in multiple entertainment companies? Susan. I exhaled deeply, trying to sound as relaxed as possible. We didn't fight. It was a breakup. It was an engagement annulment. But clearly, Alger wasn't accepting it. After hanging up, the room fell silent again. From the kitchen just a wall away, there was a faint sound. I opened the bedroom door and stepped into the living room, where I saw a familiar figure standing by the counter. Alger had changed into casual home clothes, tied an apron around his waist, and was patiently simmering fish soup. His sleeves were rolled halfway up, and his bangs hung down, softening his features. You're awake? He noticed me watching him from the corner of his eye, then looked up, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Perfect timing, I made fish soup. Try it, I remember you used to love it. He ladled a bowl of creamy white soup and handed it to me. I didn't take it, letting his fingers, which never touched anything messy, turn bright red from the heat of the porcelain bowl. You stopped my endorsement contract. I asked him directly. Not in a questioning tone, but as a statement. Alger avoided the question, placing the bowl down and waving his right hand in front of me. I burned myself, Maxine. Aren't you going to show some concern? His voice held a trace of a complaint. For the first time, he, the high and mighty figure, cooked, and a few drops of hot oil splashed on his hand, turning it bright red in an instant. He sighed quietly, almost like a dog trying to apologize after upsetting its owner. Seeing as I'm injured, please don't be angry with me, okay? When I stayed silent, he seemed to think I had calmed down and moved in to hug me. I took a step back, meeting his surprised gaze with a steady look. At 26, Alger certainly seemed to love me. His bank account had no spending limits, I could buy a private jet, and he wouldn't bat an eye. Some people advised him not to spoil me too much, and he just smiled and replied. I earn money, so my wife can spend it. Recently, on my grandmother's 80th birthday, he turned down all his social engagements to celebrate with me. My grandmother took my hand and quietly asked how we got together. He was peeling an apple and answered for me. I decided on her when I was 17. It sounded pretty nice, right? But behind my back. Not only did he cheat with Nina, but he also called me filthy. Thinking of that, I bitterly shook my head. I'm not angry. I made myself clear. Annul the engagement. The last sentence seemed to strike a nerve. Alger's expression darkened instantly, his smile fading, and his gaze turned icy. I've lowered myself to comfort you. What more do you want? He seemed genuinely furious. But I remained unmoved, coldly staring at him. Unable to get through to me, Alger softened his tone and gently coaxed. It's all about the industry, right? I blocked your resources because I don't want you to be in the spotlight. If you really don't want to leave the industry, you could work behind the scenes. I don't want my wife to become the topic of other people's conversations. Finally, he said it out loud. Topic of conversation? Because I debuted as an escort? Alger rubbed his temple, not directly answering my question. But I knew what he was thinking. That's not the point. Be good. Let's not waste the time we have loving each other on fighting. Loving each other? But Alger, you betrayed me long ago, didn't you? What's love got to do with it? I chuckled bitterly, suddenly wanting to tear away his fake mask. I saw everything. I locked eyes with Alger's confused gaze. Staring into his eyes, I made him remember, word by word. Last night, when you said you were busy, were you at Nina's place kissing her? That was a long, long silence. Time seemed to stand still. I tried to find something in Alger's eyes, even the smallest trace of guilt would have been enough. But there was nothing. All I caught was a fleeting panic in his gaze. Maybe he finally remembered how he had stabbed me in the back right in front of Nina. Between her and me, who do you prefer? Of course, it's you, baby. Then why didn't you answer my calls? Are you with her? Why are you imagining things? I wouldn't touch her, I think she's disgusting. Even after a night had passed, thinking back to this conversation still left me breathless, with a suffocating pain in my chest. Alger's face faded from color inch by inch until it turned ashen. He struggled to call my name. Maxine. Negative emotions came rushing toward me like a tidal wave. My eyes burned, and I fought back tears, refusing to let them fall. I hadn't done anything wrong. I wasn't the one who betrayed. Why should I cry? But the tears came anyway, like pearls falling from a broken string, unstoppable. Alger was the same as always. When he saw me cry, he lost all composure, hastily reaching out to wipe away my tears. I pulled away from his touch. His heart ached at my movement, his lips trembling as he hoarsely explained. Maxine, listen to me. It was just a fling with her, nothing serious. The only person I love is you. Really, I'll send her away right now. Don't be angry, please forgive me, just this once. I had never seen such panic and helplessness in Alger's eyes. Suddenly, I couldn't help but laugh. Forgive you? At the sound of those words, Alger's eyes, once like still water, suddenly sparkled with hope. He thought I would forgive him. How laughable. Forgive you, and then after we reconcile. Keep wondering whether you'll end up in someone else's bed the next time you work late or attend a social event. Or whether I'll spend each day questioning and worrying about what you said behind my back, calling me dirty? I looked at him coldly, the tears slowly falling from my eyes. Do you know, Alger? A betrayer is never worthy of forgiveness. He could barely stand, as if his soul had left his body. He couldn't even muster a single retort. All he could do was whisper my name again and again. His breath uneven. In the end, even he didn't know what to say. Was he going to confess his love for me? Or continue begging me to forgive him, tears streaming down his face? I didn't look at him anymore. I took off my ring, placed it on the countertop, and turned to leave. Alger rushed after me, wrapping his arms around me from behind and resting his chin on my shoulder. A few sobs escaped from his throat. Where are you going? Don't leave me, don't be so heartless. I really know I was wrong, please give me one more chance. I pulled away with all my strength, stepping back. Until the door opened. He tried to grab my hand, but only caught empty air. I looked at him with red eyes and forced out a bitter smile. Alger, I'm not dirty. But you're filthy. He froze in place, not daring to take another step forward. Are you scared, Alger? The great, untouchable you, are you afraid of my leaving? But the first one to let go was you. Half an hour later, I was back at my own place. Susan and my assistant were squatting by the door, clearly having been waiting for me for a long time. Are you okay? Are you hungry? I bought you your favorite soup dumplings. My assistant asked carefully. I instinctively said I was fine, but after failing to enter the door password 3 times, I broke down and cried. Alger's words before I left kept replaying in my mind. Leave me, and you'll only be even more stuck. I didn't stop walking, didn't even turn my head. He was standing at the doorway, kicking the door in frustration, saying how cruel I was. I didn't understand. I really didn't understand how we, once so deeply in love, had ended up at the point of hating each other. Susan crouched down and hugged me tightly. It's okay, don't cry. Leaving someone like him, cutting your losses in time, you should be happy. My assistant fumbled to pull out a tissue, wiping my tears in a panic, her voice choked with emotion as she tried to comfort me. Seeing them so angry and standing up for me, I suddenly felt a warm rush in my heart. Girls are truly the most wonderful beings in the world. I wiped away my tears and forced a smile. That night, they stayed with me until we were all drunk, talking through the night until dawn. All the pent-up emotions were finally released, and I raised a glass of champagne, clinking it with Susan's from across the room. After finishing it, she smiled at me. This one's for a new beginning. My tears nearly fell again. The first few years, we had a tough time. There are levels in the entertainment industry too, and for someone like me, who started out relying on my looks, getting good scripts or roles was like climbing a mountain. Susan's stomach had been ruined back then from drinking so much. I'll never forget how she, drunk and staggering, still managed to push me in front of the director for the movie Little Dimple. This is Maxine, she looks slim, but she's really tough. She soaked in cold water all winter without complaining, and never cried out in pain when she fell off the wires. Please give her a chance, she works so hard. She blocked the director's path, going on and on about how great I was. The director, half amused, finally gave me a chance to audition. That role ended up being mine. The day the movie broke 100 million at the box office, Susan smiled and raised a glass with me, just like today. May you always walk the flower path, Maxine. But now, because of Alger, it felt like my flower path was coming to an end. So, what's your plan next? Susan asked as she stood by the window, slinging her arm over my shoulder. Are you going to keep working, or take a break? I blinked and shifted my gaze to the window. The night was cool and still, the once bustling city now blanketed in silence. Only a few scattered lights remained, shining on the late-night wanderers, silently guiding them home. After a moment of hesitation, I softly said, Susan, I think I want to go back home and visit Grandma. In March, at my hometown, a spring rain had just fallen. I held an umbrella as I walked toward Grandma's house, when a few snippets of conversation floated into my ears. Did you hear? Brian is coming here tomorrow to shoot a film. Huh? Really? This place is so remote. Yes, really. He even suggested it to the director. I paused for a moment. Then, I continued walking, as if nothing had happened. Grandma didn't know I was coming home. She was napping in her rocking chair, but the moment I stepped into the yard, she seemed to sense it and opened her eyes. She froze for a second, then broke into a childlike grin, stumbling out to greet me. My little treasure, what brings you home so suddenly? 7 years ago, Grandma had heart surgery, and the doctors told her to avoid anger and heavy physical activity. I rushed to her, smiling as I linked my arm with hers. I missed your cooking, Grandma. She playfully pinched my nose and teased me for being a little glutton, then looked behind me several times. Where's Alger? Didn't he come with you this time? Hearing his name, my throat tightened, and tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't intended to tell Grandma, but since Mom and Dad passed away, she was my only remaining family. How could I hide this from her? So, I threw myself into her arms, letting the tears fall freely. We've separated. I originally thought she would ask me what happened, or maybe subtly ask for the reason. But she didn't. She just looked at me gently and tucked the stray hair behind my ear. You can make any decision, and I will support you unconditionally. In that moment, what was I thinking? I was thinking, how could I have such a wonderful grandmother? I really, really love her. That night, I lay beside her like I did when I was little, and she gently patted my back, soothing me to sleep. The next morning, the spring rain had just stopped. I opened the door and suddenly saw a familiar figure. The man stood tall under the white pear tree not far away, his face obscured by the mist, making it hard to read his expression. The wind carried the sweet fragrance of the pear blossoms, drifting softly around the tree. As I approached, he raised his eyebrows at me. I froze for a moment, then took the initiative to greet him. Long time no see. Brian. He didn't say anything, just silently looked at me. It was just like 5 years ago. After finishing the film we worked on together, Brian had confessed to me under the pear tree, only to be rejected, and he remained silent then, too. It wasn't a pleasant situation. Since then, every time Brian and I met at an event, he would always look away first. Thinking of this, I lowered my eyes, feeling a little regretful for greeting him. Seconds passed by. I awkwardly smiled and was about to turn away. Then the sudden sound of my phone vibrating broke the silence between us. Brian. You said you were going out to meet someone. It's been almost 2 hours, why aren't you back? The shoot's about to start. I stopped in my tracks, just about to walk away. Meet someone? Was Brian going to meet me? I was lost in thought when I heard his assistant's murmurs from the phone. But Brian himself didn't seem in a rush at all. Even though he was a head taller than me, he could have easily looked down at me from above. Instead, he slightly bent forward, bringing his gaze level with mine. He spoke slowly, his voice as pleasant as I remembered. It was both captivating and laced with a faint smile. Long time no see, Maxine. Long time no see, but how long exactly? I first met Brian at the audition for Little Pear Dimple. At that time, he had already become a top-tier actor due to a few popular dramas, and was the director's choice for the male lead. As for me, I was an ex-adult film star with a poor reputation, and I wasn't even considered for the role of the female lead. They just asked me to come in for the audition as a formality. As soon as I stood there and hadn't even spoken my first line, the assistant director called out to stop. Miss Maxine, we're looking for a pure, innocent type for the female lead. You are a bit too well endowed in some areas. Not quite suitable, understand? He cleared his throat, obviously with ill intentions. People around me snickered. I stood frozen, clutching the edges of my dress, my face flushed. Actually, I had been through similar situations before, but I couldn't afford to get upset. Otherwise, it would only make it harder for Susan to fight for resources for me in the future. The mocking laughter still echoed in my ears. Then, suddenly, a clear male voice cut in. Is this funny? Brian stood at the door, a cigarette between his fingers, coldly scanning the room. His gaze eventually landed on the assistant director. You're fired. The assistant director clearly wasn't pleased and raised his voice to question. The director hasn't said anything yet, who do you think you are to fire me? The room fell into a deathly silence. The director's face turned pale. Brian flicked the cigarette away, lazily raising his eyes to squint at him. Sorry, but this is actually my decision. After all, Charlie is my father. I remember Charlie was the biggest investor in this film. For him, rearranging the crew was just a matter of making a call. The assistant director was immediately stunned and, as he was forced out, kept apologizing to me, hoping I would intercede for him. But I didn't. I wasn't a saint. After this little incident, Brian and the director sat at the front, intently watching my performance. The female lead of Little Pear Dimple was a pure college girl who was kidnapped and forced into the world of prostitution, but then met the man who would rescue her. I spent 3 months getting into the character's psychology, figuring out the tone of each line and the micro-expressions. No one knew that, for those 10 minutes of screen time, I had practiced countless times in private. So, when the director shouted cut, I was still immersed in the role, a tear hanging from the corner of my eye. Brian, ever the gentleman, handed me a tissue and complimented me seriously. Good performance. I'm not sure if it was just my imagination, but I thought I saw appreciation in his eyes. The contract was signed on the spot, and I was so excited that I rushed to the stairwell to call Susan and share the good news. When I came out, I found someone standing outside. Brian had his hands in his pockets, leaning against the wall, with a cigarette between his lips. He must have wanted to find a quiet place to smoke, but had stopped when he heard someone inside. I politely smiled at him, preparing to walk past. Brian tilted his head slightly and called out to me. I turned around to look at him, and suddenly he went silent. Those dark eyes of his were like the full moon after the fog had lifted from the sea, bright, yet distant. After a long while, I finally heard his soft voice. Congratulations. My leading lady. I remember Brian wasn't the type to get involved in other people's business, but that time, he unexpectedly stood up for me. After joining the crew, I asked him why. The afternoon sunlight poured into the lounge. Brian stood by the window, reading the script, not even lifting his eyelids, before casually answering my question. It's just wearing a swimsuit. Why should that be something to be stigmatized? I didn't expect him to be so straightforward. I froze for a moment. Brian didn't wait for my response, lightly closed the script, and walked toward me. We locked eyes for a second or two, and he gave me a small smile. What women wear in front of the camera is their own choice. And this industry is filthy, there are so many men having one-night stands and cheating. Why isn't anyone criticizing them, but they're so harsh on the women who have made a film? Brian looked at me earnestly and reached out, gently ruffling my hair. If you ever hear those rumors again, stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid, I've got your back. I could hear his voice in the rhythm of my heartbeat, as clear and pure as the shimmering surface of a lake in sunlight. That afternoon, the weather was beautiful. But in front of me, everything seemed clouded. It wasn't until Brian left, and the tears started falling on the script, that I realized. Those few words from him were, for me, a form of salvation. As we neared the end of filming, the media came in for interviews, and the crew arranged for the lead actors to exchange farewell gifts. I prepared a bottle of perfume, Bulgari green tea. It had a pear blossom note before the rainstorm, fresh and clean. Brian took it with a smile, his lips curving into a perfect arc. Thank you, I really like it. The host, trying to liven up the mood, joked. As long as it's from Flora, Eden, do you like it? Flora and Eden were the names of our characters. It was a clever question. Everyone could hear the multiple meanings behind it. I saw Brian's assistant signaling frantically for him to skip this topic. But Brian ignored him, laughed softly, and openly admitted. Of course, because she deserves it. After saying that, he let a delicate necklace slip from his fingers. When he put it on me, the tattoos on his arm were more visible, exposed both to me and the cameras. It was a small 5-petaled pear blossom. My heart skipped a beat. It felt like something was about to burst out. The interview was broadcast live, and by the time the recording was finished, both Brian's and my names had climbed to the top of the trending list. That night, I received a phone call for the first time in a long while. It was Alger's voice. It came unexpectedly, falling into my ears. He seemed drunk, his words slurring. Maxine, will you wait for me just a little longer? Wait for me to inherit the family business, and I'll come find you right away. I beg you, don't be with him. No one loves you more than I do. Back then, I really liked Alger. So, without hesitation, I said. Okay. After that, I avoided Brian for a long time. It wasn't until the last day of filming, after the crew's dinner, when I came out of the restaurant and waited for a car by the pear tree on the roadside, that I saw him. How long do you plan to avoid me? Brian had appeared behind me, I hadn't noticed him approach. The twilight blurred his profile, and the fiery clouds at the horizon slowly colored the tips of his ears red. You can't be blind. I like you. I froze. I thought avoiding him was the answer. But this person, he wouldn't give up, and he took another direct shot. Brian's gaze was so intense, I couldn't look him in the eyes, and I quickly averted my gaze. How did I reject him back then? Oh, I said. Brian, maybe you're still in character. From the moment we started filming, his nickname for me had always been Little Dimple. But Little Dimple was the pet name the male lead used for the female lead in the movie. Was he in love with the female lead, Little Dimple, or with me, Maxine? I couldn't tell, and I didn't want to figure it out. Brian parted his lips, seemingly about to argue, but then noticed the emptiness of my neck, and froze. I took out the necklace from my bag and handed it back to him. The ruby ring he had worn that night immediately made his eyes flash red. That evening, Brian silently stared at me for a long time. Before we parted, he smiled bitterly. Fine. Pretend I was never in character. And then for 5 whole years, we had no contact. The only interaction was when the news of my engagement to Alger went viral. Brian quietly liked the post, then privately sent me a message of congratulations. Be happy, Little Dimple. I replied with 2 words. Thank you. This time, Brian really came to see me on purpose. The female lead of the film he was shooting was a rich girl with no acting skills, and the whole crew was fed up with her. So, he recommended me to the director. I lowered my eyes, hesitant. I was supposed to go shopping with my grandmother today. She had promised to cook my favorite dish for me. Before I could refuse, I caught a glimpse of the old lady carrying a bamboo basket, walking out from the house, smiling gently at me. Go ahead, little darling. I'm old now, and you're busy with work, rarely coming home. Make more movies. That way, when I miss you, I can just turn on the TV and see you, right? A wave of emotion surged in my chest, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, ripples spreading. Come back early. Large petals of pear blossoms fell. The old lady walked slowly out of the yard, waving at me. With no more hesitation, I followed Brian to the set. The audition and costume fitting went smoothly. But what I didn't expect was that, when I was about to sign the contract, someone suddenly burst in, snatching the pen from my hand. Stop messing around, Maxine. Come home with me. It had only been 2 days, but Alger had aged a lot. His eyes were bloodshot, as if concealing some unspoken pain. I smiled faintly, tilting my head to look at him. Mr. Alger, if you don't have Alzheimer's, you should remember we've broken up. Alger froze. Contrasting with him was Nina, who stood behind him. Her face radiated joy, her gaze at me full of smug satisfaction. She probably thought she could finally take my place. But the next moment, Alger shattered her fantasy. You were the one who broke up with me. I didn't agree, Maxine. Really, he was so shameless. Nina's smile froze at the corner of her lips. I clearly saw the flash of jealousy in her eyes. Alger apologized to the director, then grabbed my arm, pulling me out of the room. It seemed like he was afraid I would resist, so he gripped me tightly, causing pain that made me furrow my brow. Let go, you're hurting me. He didn't listen. Until a strong hand landed on his shoulder. Brian stepped forward, standing protectively behind me, his face dark as he glared at Alger. She told you to let go. Are you deaf? Alger blinked in confusion for a moment, his eyes darting between me and Brian. Then, he sneered. What's this, 5 years later, and you still like her? He smirked, adopting the pose of a victor, and mocked. What should I call you, Mr. Brian? Or maybe, a defeated opponent? The air was eerily silent. My heart trembled. I had no idea what would happen next. Brian's hand, hanging at his side, was clenched into a fist, veins standing out. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally heard his response. His voice was low, but firm. You won, but did you ever cherish her? The answer was clear, crystal clear. Alger pursed his lips and said nothing. He extended his hand toward me, the ruby ring lying in his palm, smiling at me as if trying to please me. Come here. I promise I'll never hurt you again. That smile was too pure. For a moment, I felt dazed. It was as if I saw the 17-year-old Alger smiling at me. Back then his eyes held only me. But I knew very clearly, he had changed. He was no longer my Alger. I trembled slightly, suppressed the turmoil inside me, and smiled calmly at him. I don't need this kind of promise. I've said it before, Alger. I won't forgive you, and I'll never go back. I kept my word. Alger's face turned pale as a sheet, instantly drained of color. I turned away and didn't look at him again, walking away without a second glance. My wrist was grabbed tightly. I turned around. Alger's eyes were red, stubbornly staring at me, his lips curling into a mocking smile. A stack of photos rained down on me. They fell like an unending snowstorm. I stood there, the sound buzzing in my ears, seeing Alger's lips move as if he were saying something. Then, Brian punched him hard, and the two men began struggling, the scene descending into chaos. When all the photos hit the ground, I trembled and started picking them up. My mind slowly began to clear. The shrill screams of women, the low curses of men, almost pierced my eardrums. I heard Alger shout. What about you, Maxine? How many men did you sleep with to get the role? I cheated just once, and you're still holding it against me. What are you pretending to be? I don't remember how I left. I was shaking all over. When I came to, I was already in Brian's car. He had a bruise on the corner of his mouth, and the back of his hand was scraped, blood oozing out in small beads. Despite the pain, he carefully covered me with a blanket. I remembered Alger's last words as I left. "Look, we're the same, dirty." I clutched my head in agony. My phone in my pocket buzzed furiously, with more and more search terms related to my name popping up. Hashtag Maxine scandal, hashtag. Hashtag Maxine backers, hashtag. Hashtag Maxine 7 years of climbing, hashtag. The pictures weren't blurred, all of them were taken when I was crouching on the ground, dazed, picking up those photos. Someone had taken the photos on purpose. Netizens zoomed in on the images, comparing them to stills from the movie I debuted in. In the end, they noticed the exact same red mole on my chest. And thus, the internet erupted into a frenzy. In just 10 minutes, the comment section was flooded with millions of distasteful words. They had never really thought about it, that red birthmark wasn't on some private part of my body. Anyone who's watched a movie would know that. But what do internet marketers care about the truth? They only care about the buzz. They only care about whether a top-tier actress can fall from her pedestal. I gave a bitter smile and curled up in the back seat, tears streaming down uncontrollably. A battered hand from the front seat passed me a tissue. I didn't take it. I grabbed his sleeve and, struggling to speak, parted my lips. "It's not me. The person in the photo isn't me." Brian didn't hesitate for a second. He reached over and held my hand tightly. "I know." The afternoon sunlight slanted across him, and the determination and sincerity in his eyes reminded me so much of 5 years ago. In the break room, Brian had told me word by word. Wearing a bikini wasn't something to be stigmatized. And now, as he gently wiped away my tears with his thumb, he softly comforted me. "I believe in you. Don't cry, okay? Stay strong. I'll go with you to the police." I had saved all the IDs of the people spreading rumors, as well as screenshots and recordings of video views, shares, and likes, and submitted them to the police. They said that after the case was filed, it would take time to investigate and gather evidence. After leaving the police station, I called Susan. She reassured me. "Don't be scared. The company has already blocked the photos and sent lawyers' letters to a few of those troublemaking accounts. For the next few days, I'll be online watching, reporting anyone who dares to spread this." Brian, showing great tact, stepped aside and leaned against the front of the car, quietly watching me. After a while, he seemed to think of something. He took out his phone from his pocket, furrowed his brow, and typed a few words. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Brian had shared the statement I posted on my social media 5 minutes ago. A person who never posts updates had made his first post about me. 6 words, brief and to the point. "Stop spreading rumors." He was the first person to speak up for me. Brian's fans, who adored him, were active in controlling the comments under my post, and the public sentiment seemed to be shifting in my favor. But soon, a flood of paid commenters started to invade. It felt as if an invisible hand was orchestrating them, determined to nail me to the pillory. Hashtag heir to the group, Alger, breaks off engagement with Maxine, hashtag. Hashtag Maxine, the discarded heiress, hashtag. These two trending topics suddenly emerged, pushing this absurd spectacle to a new height. I clicked on the latest interview video. Alger didn't appear, and Nina responded on his behalf. She smiled softly in front of the camera, but when she mentioned my name, her eyes were filled with venom. "Maxine? I don't know her. I vaguely heard that she's quite reckless in her personal life. Alger used to like her a lot, but who would have thought she would betray him?" She flipped her long hair behind her ear, revealing a ruby ring on her ring finger. It looked like a declaration of war, or perhaps a provocation. Suddenly, someone snatched my phone away. I looked up, and Brian's face, reflected in his eyes, was ashen. "Don't look anymore. I'll take you home. Your grandmother is waiting for you." Right, Grandma was waiting for me at home. After all this, it was already nightfall. She must have been anxiously waiting. I rushed to go home, but at the alleyway, I bumped into the neighbor's grandmother. She rushed towards me, and a terrible premonition suddenly rose in my chest. Your grandmother's heart condition flared up. I ran back home like a madwoman, finding Grandma lying stiffly on the floor. The neighbor said that while talking with her, Grandma had seen my news, gotten agitated, and called Alger. Something in the conversation triggered her condition. The ambulance arrived quickly, but the doctors' faces were grim, and I didn't dare ask any questions. I was afraid of hearing something bad. When we reached the hospital, my legs were so weak that I stumbled as I got out of the car, collapsing to my knees. I didn't catch up to Grandma, just watching as they wheeled her into the emergency room. Brian picked me up in his arms and gently set me down in the family waiting area. We had rushed out without wearing masks. People were coming and going, holding up their phones, taking pictures, and it wouldn't be long before it hit the trending charts. But I had no energy to care about them. Cold sweat soaked my back, and my mind was consumed by one thought. I just wanted Grandma to survive. As long as she was safe, I would trade anything. I buried my face in my arm, staying perfectly still in that position. Until someone sat beside me. When I looked up, I saw that the crowd of onlookers had been asked to leave. I hesitated and whispered, "Brian, I'm so scared." His warm, dry hand covered mine, but I could clearly feel him trembling too. His voice, lighter than air, responded, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." I lowered my head even further, muttering to myself, "It's all my fault. I should have gone back earlier. I should have realized Grandma would confront Alger. She loves me so much. Seeing that news, she must have been so angry. Wait, Alger. What exactly did he say to Grandma?" I fumbled to pull out my phone, but before I could dial, a hoarse male voice called from the end of the hallway. "Maxine." Seeing the culprit, I rushed over and slapped him hard across the face. Alger turned his head away from the blow, pressing his tongue against his cheek, but he didn't lose his temper. He lowered his gaze and, with eyes full of apology, apologized to me. The call. I didn't answer it. I was in a meeting at the time. Then who did? He didn't answer. I sneered and slapped him again. "Maxine, I really didn't know. When I saw the trending news about you at the hospital, I panicked. On my way here, I checked the call logs and found out that Grandma had called me. Don't worry. Grandma will be okay." He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away. I took a few steps back, leaning against the wall, and suddenly my phone vibrated wildly, several times in quick succession. I saw a flurry of white message bubbles from Nina. She asked me if Alger had come to see me. When I didn't reply, she frantically begged me to stay away from him. She said she'd spent 7 years with him, watching him go from having nothing to being in control of everything. She was the one who deserved to be his wife. She said that, actually, I was the third party because when Alger first met her, they had an affair. Even though he was drunk, he was still calling my name. She said that when they were in their second year together, my rumors with Brian made the news, and that night, after Alger called me, he was actually sleeping in her bed. She said Alger had a cleanliness fetish and that I should back off. She said so much, and as I gripped my phone, it felt like my heart was being cruelly squeezed. It felt like it was about to shatter. So, they'd been entangled all along, hadn't they? I was such a fool. A fool who had loved him all those years. A fool who didn't know any of this. But why, at this moment, when Grandma's life was hanging by a thread, did they have to tell me the truth? Why was it so cruel, to drive the dagger of past love into me again, when my loved one's life was on the line? At that moment, I felt like I was on the brink of collapsing. I had never hated Alger like I did now. Even if he cheated, even if he misunderstood me, I just wanted to leave him. But now, I hated him. I walked over and slammed my phone hard against his head. Blood started trickling from his forehead. He glanced at the screen, and his panicked eyes grew even more filled with despair. "Can you and your mistress just stay the hell away from me, Alger?" "Yes, I admit I was stupid. I'm easy to fool. Your I love you made me fall for you, willingly, for 7 years. But I don't love you anymore. I don't want you anymore." I grabbed his collar, hysterical. "So, please, just get out of my life, okay?" Alger let me vent, his face full of sorrow, but he said nothing. Finally, it was Brian who hugged me from behind. He kept trying to comfort me until the light in the emergency room went out, and the doctor came out, taking off his mask to speak to me. But I couldn't hear him. I only saw Grandma. When Grandma was wheeled out, her face was covered by a white cloth. When I was little, Grandma told me that after people die, they turn into stars. Stars that light the way for their family. She would hug me, point to the two brightest stars in the sky, and say those were my parents. During that time, I cried easily, feeling fragile. She would smile at me, "Don't cry, don't cry. You still have Grandma. Grandma will always be here for you." But I never thought forever would turn out to be only 7 years. Now, I have nothing left. No family. No love. Nothing. After taking care of Grandma's funeral arrangements, I finally dared to step back into that little courtyard. The smell of pear blossoms filled the air. The dining table was full of food, fish soup that I loved, and the saucy meat I had asked for. I sat down like a zombie, grabbing a piece of meat and shoving it into my mouth. Brian had been worried about me for the past few days. He had taken leave from the set and followed me everywhere I went. He snatched my chopsticks from me, saying, "It's gone bad, don't eat it." When his eyes met mine, red and swollen, his words got caught in his throat. I glared at him, and a moment later, my stomach churned. I ran to the trash can and threw up. He squatted beside me, patiently rubbing my back. "If you want to cry, just cry." Since I heard about Grandma's passing, and saw her cremated alone, I had stayed calm. But now, hearing these words, I completely broke down. That day, I almost lost control. I clung to Brian's arm, my tears and snot staining his shirt. When I grew tired of crying, I collapsed into his arms. His hands gently supported my waist, and he laid me down on the bed. I had a dream. Grandma was in it. She smiled at me and said she would protect me. Sure enough, when I woke up, the police had issued an official statement. After technical analysis, the so-called sexy photos were found to be digitally altered. The person in those photos wasn't me at all. They retrieved the surveillance footage from the studio hallway on the day of the incident and identified the person who took and leaked the photos. From there, they followed the trail and found Nina. They traced her back to the mastermind behind it all. I was called to the police station to confirm the case, and as I was leaving, I brushed past him. I recognized him. He was the old man from 6 months ago, who had asked me how much for a night and had been forced to kneel and apologize to me by Alger. He had lost face, held a grudge, and hired someone to make a set of fake photos using AI. Originally, he wanted to ruin my reputation with some false rumors. But when Nina found out, she bought the photos for a high price, then passed them on to Alger. She intentionally misled him into believing the person in the photos was me. And just like that, the truth came out. When I stepped out of the police station, several media outlets were already gathered outside, and microphones were shoved into my face. Questions were thrown at me one after another. "Brian was the first to speak up for you. What's your relationship like off-screen? Alger's secretary framed you. Did you two have a history? Will you get back together with Alger?" I smiled at the camera and only answered the last question. No. As Susan escorted me into the car, I rolled down the window and saw Alger not far away. He looked exhausted and vulnerable. When he heard my answer, his dry eyes shimmered with unshed tears. It seemed like he had something to say, but in the end, he kept quiet. The car started. I didn't look back. 3 days later, I officially joined the set. Susan looked worried and asked, "Are you sure you don't want to take a break?" I understood what she meant. Grandma had just passed away, and I had been through a public online attack. Now, after clearing my name, I was jumping straight into high-intensity work. She was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle it. I remembered something she had told me before and smiled faintly. No rest for me. I'm going to walk the flower path forever. This way, I could live up to all the hard work she had put in over the years. The film was shot in a small town, and I stayed there for over 2 weeks. Then, one day, I received a long handwritten letter. It was from Alger. He had hurried back to city not long ago. He heard that Nina had been dumped by him and had turned to seduce his half-brother. The battle over company shares had reached a boiling point. Under such circumstances, he actually had the time to write to me. In the afternoon, when I had no scenes to shoot, my assistant rented a boat for me, and I took a leisurely tour of the lake. Sitting at the bow of the boat, I slowly opened the letter. The handwriting, though practiced many times, was still like worms crawling across the page. Maxine. I don't know if you're even willing to open this letter. Maybe just hearing my name makes you disgusted. But I still want to defend myself. Don't mind me, okay? Let me think about where to start. Do you remember, when I was 17, I put your mom's ring on your finger, the one she left for her future daughter-in-law? Maybe you won't believe it, but at that time, I really, really liked you. But then, what changed? When your family went bankrupt, that woman came back to the country with her illegitimate son, fighting me for the family inheritance. My dad was biased and wanted to transfer shares to them, but I couldn't accept it. They had nothing to do with where we are today. They didn't deserve a cent. After you entered the entertainment industry, I met Nina. She's really capable. She helped me quickly win the board's support. After kicking the illegitimate son out of the company, I took Nina out to celebrate, and I got drunk. That's when I mistook her for you. Maxine, you don't know, I think about you every day. I think about you until I almost go crazy. Especially when I saw you trending with rumors about other men, I drank myself into a stupor. I really wanted to take you back right away, but I couldn't. My shares were nothing compared to my father's. With a snap of his fingers, he could throw us out of City A. I waited for 5 years until I heard he was seriously ill. Once I took control, I rushed back to find you. I should have been happy, but on the way here, I overheard a few men discussing your body. In that moment, I just lost it. Once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows into something bigger. So when Nina showed me those photos, I immediately believed they were real. Forcing you out of the industry was just so I could keep you at home, to protect you. But fate always plays tricks. You found out about my betrayal. In those 2 days you were gone, I searched everywhere for you. I couldn't find you, and my heart shattered. I brought those photos to you because I wanted to talk to you properly. I thought, since I betrayed you, you must have betrayed me too. We could clear the air, forget it, and be together again. But it seems like you don't want me anymore. I didn't expect anyone to have secretly taken those photos, or to leak them. The company's stock plummeted, and the board forced me to choose between you and the shares. I'm sorry, Maxine. The 26-year-old Alger is really an asshole. But could you give me one more chance? I really know I was wrong. After I got back to City A, I retrieved Nina's and Grandma's phone calls, and handed them to the police. But Nina insists she didn't know Grandma had a heart condition. The police can't do anything for now. But don't worry, I will avenge Grandma. I know you hate me, but I still love you. Just like I did when I was 17. I love you passionately. The sunlight in March was bright and warm. I thought for a moment, then decided to call Alger. He picked up almost immediately, his voice flat. But I could still hear the surprise he was trying hard to suppress. Did you really love me, Alger? Without hesitation, he answered. Of course, Maxine. I've always loved you. I smiled slightly and asked, in return. Okay. You say you love me, but why, when you received those photos, didn't you ask me about them right away? Why did you believe them so easily? Loving someone isn't like that. You don't just judge them without even giving them a chance to explain. Alger was silent. I continued. To love me, but betray me, to love me, but not trust me. This kind of short-lived and insincere love, I'd rather not have. The other end was quiet, only the sound of breathing remained. I wasn't sentimental, and I hung up the phone directly. Maybe this was the last time we'd ever contact each other. 3 months later, the wrap party for the new film was held. I sat at the table, my assistant sitting next to me, idly scrolling through her phone. Suddenly, I heard a low exclamation. My elbow was lightly poked. Mr. Alger hit someone with his car. I heard Nina has evidence of his crimes and is forcing him to give up all his shares and step down. As a result, Mr. Alger, simply. I listened quietly, taking a sip of my red wine. Nina died on the spot, there was blood everywhere. The photos are pretty scary. The assistant, reading the mood, asked if I felt anything. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and honestly said. No. We'd ended things a long time ago. From the moment I said we were done. At the party, I'd drunk a little too much red wine and felt a bit dizzy. I stood up and went outside to get some air. Brian followed me out. Your face is so red. Are you feeling okay? The air is stuffy. I tilted my head slightly, smiling at him. Can you take me for a drive? Brian paused for a few seconds, then suddenly grabbed my wrist and pushed me into the back seat of the car. His warm breath brushed my ear. With a click, the seatbelt was fastened. I pinched my ear, feeling a bit flushed for some reason. Brian drove steadily, and I sat in the back seat with the window halfway open. The heavy summer evening breeze helped clear away some of my unpleasant thoughts. A few times, I unconsciously lifted my gaze. Brian's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. The tattoo of pear blossoms on his arm was still striking. I instinctively turned my eyes away. But then I heard him speak softly. It's been 5 years. We've worked on 2 films together. I've long since fallen out of character. I closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the necklace dangling inside the car. A sudden sharp break. The fresh, clean scent of pear blossoms drew near. Can you open your eyes and look at me? My leading lady. End of the story.